So at Aerial Grand Prix, we like to FPV race. That's first-person view. But there's also aerial cinematography. What are the differences between aerial cinematography and FPV racing?
The primary difference between FPV and aerial cinematography is that the FPV uses a fixed camera on the aircraft and gets a much greater sense of what the aircraft is doing in the air, with its attitude, its angle, its pitch, its roll, objects speeding by, and it's a more immersive experience, and you're more in tune with the aircraft flying it from a cockpit point of view.
Right.
That's typically used with goggles or a monitor where you've got most of the sunlight blocked out, that you're totally immersed in what's happening right in front of you with the aircraft. The motion picture and commercial aspect of it is you really want a very stabilized cinematic look with the camera, so that you're using gimbals to stabilize the camera on the platform. You're also moving much slower with the aircraft. And typically, the higher end equipment, you have a pilot operating the aircraft, and you have an operator operating the gimbal and the camera system separate from the aircraft. So he's controlling pitch and tilt and the third axis of rotation, the yaw, for the camera gimbal. And the multirotor operator is just flying the aircraft, keeping an eye on that. He'll have his own FPV camera so that he can watch what he's close to in the sky, but he's basically keeping eyes on a visual line of sight with the aircraft. The guys flying FPV are really into the exciting sport of how close they can get to objects, how fast they can get around obstacles, and how fast they can get down straightaways, and how close to the ground they can skim. It's really, really more of an adrenaline-based flight experience.
So let's talk a little bit about what do we use? Like, what does a transmitter look like with the LCD, and if we have goggles? Here's one of your transmitters. Let's talk about what's on here. What is this?
So this is actually a phantom transmitter that we've modified to put the tilt mechanism for the camera on the front of the transmitter, so you have access from either the pitch and roll stick or the throttle and yaw stick, instead of reaching around behind with the small increments that the factory provides. Then we have a tray assembly that would put your video monitor in alignment with you flying. And then we've got a little patch antenna for receiving the video downlink. We have a single control switch that's locked so that you can't bump it on or off accidentally. And we also have a single power supply that powers everything from the transmitter to the receiver to the video monitor, all off a single power source. So this you just put on with a strap, and you can adjust the angle, and you can watch the aircraft through the video, or through the video downlink on the aircraft. Now that is different. This is basically set up for guys that want to do aerial videography, or cinematography, or just aerial photography.
And this is a single man operation, correct?
Correct.
And this is just for a tilt?
This tilts the camera up and down because your panning is controlled by the yaw of the aircraft.
Now, if I wanted to just do FPV racing, I would just have goggles, right? Something like this?
These are some of the FPV goggles. These are also compatible with 3D if you want to put the 3D cameras on your system. This plugs into a pack that has the power supply, the receiver, and the control for the FPV goggles. And that's
so we can view what we're flying through a board camera. What is a board camera?
Board camera is just a really inexpensive little camera package with a sensor on it and a very inexpensive lens. And you can get them with various fields of view, so that you can get either a really wide field of view, so you don't have great depth perception with a single board camera, especially with a great field of view. But it just makes it more exciting to have that much stuff going past you as you're flying.
So it doesn't cost very much to put this camera on and start flying. So that's pretty awesome.
If we're doing relative cost comparisons between FPV and videography, aerial videography, you're going to be starting with, first of all, a very much smaller aerial platform. So you can fly 200 to 300, 350 millimeter quads and hexes, and a very tiny transmitter, low power transmitter, inexpensive antennas, and an inexpensive camera that's fixed on the aircraft. So it just flies wherever that aircraft is pointed. So it's a great sport to get into for the budget-minded guys and the guys that are just really driven by adrenaline more than anything.
Awesome.
And you're not investing a lot of money if you crash.
Right, which we do.
Yeah, that's inevitable.